one, check one, check two. There's the major. I see him there. And how are you, sir? Glad to have you with me. It's very exciting. Yeah, it's a good time. But yeah, hopefully I won't crash my software. Adding you to the. I know there's a new update coming soon. I'm so excited for it, but it's not there yet. Go. Cross, paste, and OK. All right. Hey, look at that. We'll get started in just a minute. Everybody hit that like, let them know you're there. We're starting up. I know I started up a little bit early to get everybody wound up. It helps the carryover from Steph's show to my show. Yeah, it's a good time. So, I'll screw it. I'll jump in here real quick with you guys. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, etc., etc., etc. I'm excited to get to the news and the conversation today because our dear friend Major Ojeda is with us, and he is joining us from the rank and file of the world. I don't know if you saw Major, and by the way, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure. We love you dearly.
Always enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a great time to have you here. Now, I think one of the biggest pieces of news, besides all the Trump stuff, which we will absolutely get to, is the fact that the union support for Biden continues to grow, and the message today released by the National Labor Board, or whatever they're called, the NATB or whatever it was, the labor group released this big ad today. Was basically not only saying that Joe Biden has lived up to his promises that he made when he first started campaigning, and has, he said, I'm going to be the most union-friendly president. We're going to make sure that these, the infrastructure bill is going to get passed, and it's going to be good union jobs. Not only has he lived up to that, but Donald Trump said the same shit and was stunningly full of shit the entire time he was in office. Never made it happen. And in the ad, they even point out how Infrastructure Week became a joke. What's your thoughts on that and the impact it will have on the election as far as like rank and file voters?
Well, I mean, there's so much about this. I don't understand why anybody would pay dues to a union and then vote for somebody that's trying to literally kill the unions.
Right.
And Joe Biden is absolutely proving himself to be the best jobs president, but also jobs, many of which are union jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, let me tell you something. Union support is crucial, and it's a real big deal.
Yeah.
And when you are able to get that union support, technically it's supposed to be not just the union, but it's all the union members that are involved, because you're the representative that is going to go and fight to make sure that unions are strengthened, that people always have a seat at the table.
That's right.
And Donald Trump doesn't want this. And Donald Trump can say, like he said, infrastructure. Next week, it's going to be infrastructure week. He never followed through and did anything. It's
right.
The same thing. It was the same thing about Nikki McKinney, whatever her name was,
mm-hmm.
where she was doing an interview, and then when she was done, she walked
McEnany.
over. McEnany. She handed this big old binder full of documents, and she was like, "This is our healthcare plan." And she handed it to, I forget who it was, but of course they immediately went and looked into it. It was literally nothing but complete and utter garbage. They never was going to do anything with healthcare. It was just full of garbage.
So my question is, I gotta say, like, heretofore in my life, and I'm sure you have a similar experience, infrastructure was one of those things that largely should have been bipartisan, right? The back and forth maybe between Republicans and Democrats is the cost of it and who's going to do it. And while Republicans gave lip service to wanting, American workers to grow and blah, 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 and do the work themselves, Democrats actually worked towards doing it. And that is the distinct difference between, any kind of even presentation about the Infrastructure Act that became the infrastructure bill, between what Trump was originally blathering about, which never, ever turned into legislation, and what Biden did. And I don't get that. Seems like one of the most easy to tee up fucking things if you want to turn your president into a two-termer. Is, okay, we got the balls in our court, and people favor this absolutely 80-90%. This is the one area where the big government conservatives somehow just push that aside, right?
Yeah.
But they couldn't fucking do it. So the question is, was he too stupid and ineffective, or were they genuinely against it to undermine the country?
To me, that's the thing, is that infrastructure is crucial everywhere.
Right,
I come from West Virginia. West Virginia was 50th out of 50th when it comes to infrastructure,
right.
and we constantly heard about money that was going to be used, and nothing ever got done. And
Mhm.
there are certain things that you can promise that sounds great, but you can't promise them every single week and never actually follow through.
Yeah,
To me, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how incompetent was the Donald Trump team even before Joe Biden, won the presidency? How
right.
incompetent can you be that you don't at least look at him and say, "Look, man, the least if you're the one who can get this infrastructure thing going, and nobody should vote against this." And once
Right.
again, Republicans will vote exactly how Donald Trump wanted. Donald Trump could have said, "All right, every Republican, you're going to vote yes on infrastructure. We're actually going to do something about it." He could have been the one that got the credit for this, and of course, he would have tried to take it too. But
Yeah.
once again, I don't even think that. I think that incompetence played a role in this, and
Yeah.
I also think that absolute pure laziness. I think that they were really more than
Yeah.
happy to talk about it, but never really wanting to actually do the work to get any of it done. And
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
embarrassment. And Joe Biden has killed by doing so. He said, if you didn't want to do it, we're going to do it. And he has
Right.
blown it out of the park.
50,000 projects already in motion with backing from both federal funding, state funding that
Yeah.
was sitting there waiting for federal support. Like in some cases, private industry who had already committed to, we'll be a part of this and we'll invest in it because it'll help us ultimately. I mean, look no further than like Amazon's electric vehicles. All of their trucks are electric, every single one of them at this point. They're going to keep growing that part of it. Like there was this money waiting to be used. And this isn't new. Like the weird part about this, like I keep going back to the Chips and Science Act because there's almost this weird idea that it couldn't happen until this year, till 2024, because suddenly computers. But in reality, the Chips and Science Act, you could have signed it. I mean, it would have been early during Obama if you really got suspicious of what China was doing. By
Yeah.
the first year of the Trump presidency, we fucking knew. We knew that the intellectual property stuff was not just theft to sell shit, it was used for the military, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And by the third year of his presidency, he could have introduced the Chips and Science Act and reshored chip factories to the United States.
Yeah.
No question, right? And stood on that. He wouldn't even had to have this pissing match that broke a bunch of farmers. He wouldn't have had to do that.
Yeah.
He could have just, and Biden rolls in and just goes, this needs to be done. They pass it. He signs it. Done. The biggest strike against the Chinese military that has ever been done since their implementation. So it's the PLA started was by Joe Biden, and Trump could have done it just like infrastructure. I mean, we're all waiting for his healthcare plan,
Yeah.
and I agree with you that there's a certain amount of laziness and disinterest. But we know that the infrastructure bill, the border bill, the comprehensive border, the immigration bill that's been floating around for a long time, a lot of this stuff was already teed up, just like the tax cut, right? The Trump tax cut was really the Mitch McConnell tax cut that they'd been like, this is our dream. Sign this, right? That was what they were waiting for. Same thing is true of most of the stuff Biden is doing. It just helps normal people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that we've got a lot of people in government that just don't give a shit about normal, everyday people.
Right.
To me, it's like if he could have, who was there not anybody in his ear telling
Right.
him how successful that these things could be, that he could actually be, hitting home runs every single day like this?
Right.
I just don't understand it, how it could be that, how you could be that backwards, how you could not see something like that,
I
in
agree.
terms of trying to get him support.
The only reason I can think of, honest to God, the only reason I can think of that he didn't want to do infrastructure was because it would be an expenditure. So, this was a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. and that would have eaten into his tax cut. That would have turned his $6 trillion hole that he blew in the budget
Yeah.
to a $7.2 trillion hole. And for whatever reason, that was the line they didn't want to cross. I'll blow a hole in it if I'm handing money back to my buddies and myself. But if the whole, contributes to the general life of Americans, fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm beginning to just realize, but this is the downside here, is
Right.
that we're able to look and see that okay, your first priority is to give a shit ton of money to the filthiest of rich people, in this country, and literally you don't want to do. I don't think they want to help people, everyday
Right.
average people. I don't think that they want to elevate anybody out of poverty. I don't think that they want. I think that they attack teachers because they want a stupid population. I
Right.
mean, I just don't. This stuff seems like it's so blatantly obvious for us to see, and yet these buffoons, just failed miserably. But once again, when it comes to doing things for the everyday people, I don't think they. I think that they refuse to do so.
Right.
Because once again, the infrastructure bill, this has created a lot of jobs. These are good, hard working, but
200,000
yeah,
almost, and by the way, largely permanent jobs,
yeah,
because there's the creation of stuff. There's still, after we're finished with this bridge, we need another bridge. After we
yeah,
finish that bridge, there's this bridge that needs repairing, and you need the same fucking crews to repair a bridge as you need to build a
to
new
build
one,
them.
and they have to
Yep.
have the same engineering and physical skills, and like this, there's no question about this. You wouldn't fly a plane without maintenance on the regular, and the idea that they treat the United States as less important than a Southwest flight is fucked up. My only I mean, I guess my question is it the border strategy? Don't solve it because I want to run on it, applied to everywhere. And how long can you do that? Because it seems like they're running out of runway.
Yeah, you're spot on. And then again too is, why are you literally obstructing progress?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, to me, the biggest thing, and a lot of people need to know this, is that there was a bipartisan border bill that was passed,
Right.
and absolutely was like everybody was like, yes, the border patrol union was yes,
That's
this is
right.
perfect. It gives us the ability to hire another 1,300 border patrol agents. It gives us the ability to hire enough lawyers to come in and try these asylum cases. It gives us the money to be able to buy the top-notch equipment possible to be able to detect fentanyl. And Donald Trump's the one that said, no, we don't want that. Don't solve the problem. But the thing is everybody in America is seeing this. We're
Mhm.
realizing the reason why the border is upside down isn't because of the Democrats, because there was legislation that was pushed and passed and well, of course, it was passed and then they turned around and killed it. They voted for it and then turned around and voted against it
Right.
because Donald Trump told them to. And if you can't see that, and if you can't look at that and go, wow, that kind of seems pretty jacked up, you're going to sit here and you're going to bitch about the border, but you're going to do everything in your power to not solve the problems because you want to blame somebody else.
Right.
I mean,
It,
anybody that falls for that is just full of shit.
well, it's interesting to me. Like, I pointed this out yesterday because it occurred to me while we were watching a bunch of these Fox clips over the last week and so or so, is that they're now talking about migrant crime as opposed to migration because the numbers are down. So they're trying to scare you about the ones that are already in, and that's the story. They've let this number of people in, and they're all terrorists and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So because the surge at the border isn't happening anymore. The volume of people crossing again and again because of Title 42 and just doing basically a loop and driving the numbers up really high is unusable as a point. But they also in these polls they were showing this sort of attitude polls as opposed to voting polls. Like the voter polls are, I'm voting for Joe Biden by like 4, 5, 10%, or 10 points in a bunch of these areas. Whereas, so Fox has switched to, well, let's talk about, some of the polls where we can find our Fox viewers trust him on Trump on the economy more. It's weird because allegedly they do that, but they're not going to vote for him. When we talk about each of these issues, like, I think they're running out of space. I think they're running out of this, an example, and they've stopped saying border because they killed the border bill. They've stopped talking about, when they talk, that's why they talk about migrant crime. That's why they talk about, migrants in New York or something like that. They've stopped talking about the border because they killed the bill. And every time they bring it up, even on Fox News, they're like, yeah, but you guys had a bill and you killed it.
Yeah.
Why is that? And so they can't even fucking say border anymore without bringing up the fact that they scuttled their own talking point.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah, they shot themselves in the foot on that one. But I'm
So-
glad that enough people out there are realizing this, because once again, you can't sit and bitch about a problem that you refuse to help solve.
Right.
That's just how it is. But once again, I mean, that's the typical Trumpaloon. I'm hoping and praying that all this stuff that's going on, every single day with Donald Trump friggin' literally, being like he's swinging a sack of friggin' unwashed assholes and hitting people on the face with it in the damn courtroom. I know there's a lot of people now looking at him in a different light, like, good Lord, you can't even stay awake during your own criminal trial.
Right.
I'm hoping that people are, and I think that they are. I really do. I mean, I think that people are really waking up. Donald Trump is screaming and crying, asking people to show up and protest at New York, and 5 people showed up, and 2 of them got on camera and just absolutely embarrassed themselves.
Right. Well, I've had this theory for a long time that Trump needs the front row Joes at his rallies because they're, it's sort of like your level of influencer and your outreach as a pop artist. You go, I need my 20 super fans for every 100 or 200 regular fans that I have, and those people bring people and blah blah blah. That's the design on that.
Well, go ahead, Donald Trump. Go ahead and call on your Proud Boys. Call on your Proud Boys, and because you know what, I don't think they will actually show up, because I think that there's enough of them that are smart enough to know that we did all this stuff for Donald Trump, and when the time comes, he didn't have our back. And he didn't have their back. And there's a lot of people right now that are rotting in a friggin' jail that deserve to be there, by the way. But once again, Donald Trump he didn't think about it even once, about pardoning all those jackaloons that stormed the Capitol. He was too busy pardoning the enablers that planned to lure those jackaloons to Washington, D.C. and launch them on the Capitol.
Well, yeah, and I think he's kind of personally disgusted by his super fans. I think they creep him out.
Yes.
And the unfortunate part for him is that they're a bunch of broke motherfuckers he wouldn't hang out with. So they're like, I'm glad I've got these cult members, but they're so unfuckable and dumb that if I talk to them, it says something about me. So I wave at them and point out that I have these people, but I wouldn't hang out with them. I got news for you. Like you and I'm sure we run into people who you see your live stream or support Turn Left Pack. By the way, turnleftpack.org is the website. Get your Jackaloon merch and support outreach into red counties, red states, and red areas to let these people who are salvageable intellectually back into, hey, the Democratic Party is not your enemy. And quite frankly, most of the successes that you are happy about right now that are improving your life are coming from us, and the Republicans are running against your a betterment of your livelihood. For the record, when you and I run into people, and I happen to love the people that I meet that watch my show or have heard what I say. It's a really nice experience.
I do too.
Yeah. And it's not for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is so disappointed by who his fans are. It's amazing.
He makes, and that's the thing, behind the scenes. And this is stuff that's getting ready to start surfacing at an alarming rate. But behind the scenes, when Donald Trump first was able to get these absolute jackaloon religious freaking zealot dumbasses that were around him, and like they would all get around him, and Donald would close his eyes and they put their hands on him, and he's the one that God's. Donald Trump's in his mind is going, what a bunch of fucking morons. And then he's caught basically telling somebody, can you believe these people believe this shit? I mean, he's caught doing this stuff. I mean, right now, at this point, most of the people that are still spewing his garbage are really just doing it because they think there's a little bit left, and there's a little bit more grift they can get from it. But I mean,
they're barnacling on him. They barnacle on the
Trump,
whale.
Yeah,
right.
Donald Trump's these people that go to these rallies dressed in head to toe, made in China Trump gear, and they start spewing the garbage, and they're so friggin' stupid.
Yeah,
You know, Donald Trump is not happy about those people, but
right.
he also knows that technically that's pretty much all he's got, and he's losing that because if he had it, there'd be more than 5 people showing up in New York
Oh,
City.
no question. And they wouldn't be like QAnon lunatics who are talking about how the money in their pocket is real because Donald Trump magically made it real money, but the money that's coming out of the Fed right now or that you get at your bank is not real money and it's all based on some sort of cabal. Like it's fucking great. It's like and the group of people that he's attracting is not only smaller, it's more and more increasingly more bizarre, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm not kidding, Stargal. That's a direct, like, as best I can, a direct quote from one of the people that was outside there. This is a person that goes to all of his rallies and believes that Trump has magic money that works only for his followers and everybody else is just contributing to the national debt. But when they spend money, they don't contribute to the national debt because it's magic Trump dollars. It's
yeah,
fucking bananas. And he
yeah,
knows it. Because that's the other thing.
yeah.
I think in his mind, what he pictured was an army of Playboy playmates showing up, going, release him so that he may bless us with his seed, right?
Yeah.
And in his head, that's what he was hoping for. And what he's got is basically 9 Roseannes,
Yeah.
outside just going, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's like,
Oh,
fuck me.
what
This
what
is,
what happened to her, Hal? What happened to her? Damn,
drugs.
she used to be a comedian that was actually pretty decent, and now she's just the worst human ever. She is a racist,
Yeah,
friggin' lie. Just, I mean, it's like,
gross.
I mean, she should be when this is over with. We should never see her again.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
she
yeah,
is
okay.
the
Two
worst.
two things. As a comedian, I can explain to some degree what's happened to her. That when you start out as a comedian, you need 2 key traits: arrogance and stupidity. Later on, those turn into confidence after you've done something. But you have to be a tuning fork for being fully yourself and stupid in the very beginning, if only in a couple of areas, which is your chances of success are almost zero and you have to believe that people will think you're funny before you've ever stood in front of a crowd. That's an amazing act of arrogance if you really think about it. Now, later on, you develop a skill and you build it and you become good at it. She had an arc of being good at it for a while and benefited from, ironically enough, the first push of, hey, there's not enough women in comedy. And she was seen by, the sitcom level of Hollywood as saying she represents the basically their flyover state idea of what people are, right?
Yeah,
That there are no
yeah,
fit people in the middle states and that she's a perfect choice because she's brash and kind of dumb and a little gross, but we can occasionally write an episode with heart that the daughter will be able to act her way through. That's what it
yeah,
was. Then over time, she like became, I think, went through a couple of increasingly frightening arcs. And it's the same thing that got Dennis Miller. 9/11 was a big turning point. There were a bunch of 9/11 cowards that reacted to seeing the towers go down as like, we need to bomb the world. These fuckers can't do this to us. And I think most of us, and I'm curious your feeling about it at the time, were like, um, this can't stand, but it's not totally shocking considering our decades of dealing with the Middle East and that kind of stuff. And like you're in that middle zone of, yeah, we're obviously going to have to respond, but it shouldn't be Iraq. Afghanistan, there are definitely training camps there. That stuff, like the logical part of a human was responding to this, going, the scale of it is shocking, but it's not shocking that it happened, and nobody deserves this, and these people were victims, all that kind of stuff. Like that was how a human dealt with it. They just like there was this fucking wall went up. Dennis Miller went from like zero, like from funny to unfunny in 6 fucking seconds and became this kind of like I mean, it's almost like they all started rocking back and forth at the sight of it. And she was one of those people that suddenly the Muslims got to go. Suddenly everybody that group's the villain now, right?
yeah.
And then after that, uh, playing around with her medications, not taking good care of herself, maybe being predisposed to some level of mental illness, and that's stacking upon itself, and then discovering QAnon. That's who she is right now.
I mean, her recent photographs. She's just. I mean, she just looks like she is just rotten to the core, mean,
Yeah.
hateful.
Hmm.
Looking in the camera like that. I mean, it's crazy. Now, but as far as like me, I was actually, we were training the 27th Engineer Battalion to go on a rotation to Kosovo, and I
Hmm.
was actually in the middle of the friggin' forest in Fort Polk, Louisiana, conducting this training when I was found that there was a plane that hit a tower in New York, and we all thought, well, that's messed up, like a plane,
Right.
accidentally crashed. And then, like 30 minutes later, I'm driving and I get stopped by a checkpoint, and they say there's been a second tower hit, the Pentagon has been hit, and we are under attack.
Right.
And I found a 4-inch black and white screen TV that the guy had hooked up in the side of his Humvee, and we
Hmm.
watched the towers fall. And I'll tell
Right.
you right now, you've never in your life seen more people that were more like, it was like, we need to get the hell out of here. We
Hmm.
need to get back. We need to get back to Fort Bragg, and we need to get ready to go get some motherfucking payback.
Right.
That's all. But then the thing is we went to Afghanistan, and then the corruption of Rumsfeld and freaking Dickhead Cheney and
Hmm.
those freaking assholes. They pulled us away from the Tora Bora Mountains when our guys were
Right.
listening to freaking Osama bin Laden on a radio. That's how close they were to him. And all of a sudden, they were told cease operations and pull back. And then we all of a sudden decided it was time to freaking go to Iraq to find weapons of mass destruction. And I went to Iraq believing
Right.
that we're going to find weapons of mass destruction.
Sure.
We all got let down so many times when we realized that we have been nothing but a bunch of friggin' puppets. And
Hmm.
look, I don't take anything back from anybody who served in the military. I
Sure.
served in the military. I love the military, but it is messed up when you realize that you had people that literally lied to you. Colin Powell literally said before he died that if he had one thing that he regretted, it was pushing the lie of
Yeah.
friggin' weapons of
The
mass
yellow
destruction.
cake bullshit. Right.
We
Absolutely.
lost
And
7,000 people in a.
JD Vance yesterday on the floor to justify his vote against Ukraine aid brought up like the Colin Powell yellow cake Iraq shit as if, by the way, he was like, I believe that we were fighting for democracy in Iraq, therefore this story about fighting for democracy in Ukraine is bullshit. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, the overlap of those stories is zero. You literally have Russia attacking an ally country. We're not putting boots on the ground. We're supplying them with the means to fight back on their own behalf, which is wholly different from us rando attacking Iraq based on a false premise because Bush and his buddies had decided this was going to be their legacy. And undermining, like you said, the genuine mission that might have existed in, especially in southern Afghanistan, dealing with this shit, which, from John Kerry's standpoint, was this is really a law enforcement thing. Like, if you want to talk about America being the police of the world, in this particular case, it's like sending our cops there to deal with somebody who tried, who murdered a bunch of people, that, in those mountains specifically, in a
Yeah.
relatively autonomous region, not a functioning country by any stretch. Afghanistan is definitely not that situation. And there would have been other ways to deal with, Saddam Hussein and Uday and Qusay, by us, or the karmic arc of history at
Yeah.
some point, right? But
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
that
money.
was their thing.
It was, let's put boots on the. Anytime you put boots on the ground, you can guarantee you just now extended this operation.
Right.
The reason why Desert Storm was 100 hours is because we allowed the Air Force and the Navy. And
Yeah.
we talk shit about the Air Force and the Navy constantly. When the Air Force and the Navy gets permission to do what they can do, shit, it's 1,000 times worse than anything we Army and Marine guys could do. They could scorch the friggin' earth. They could turn an entire city into a fucking glass factory in no time at all. And that's what they did. I mean,
Right.
they schwacked friggin' tanks after tanks. I mean, it was brutal. But
And that
I mean,
targeting, the targeting and the specificity of both the Air Force and the Navy since even the beginning of the Iraq War is an order of magnitude more precise, because the American people, even despite Bush and Cheney and their attitude towards it, values human life, even when those humans are against us and are yelling death to us, as long as they're not actually actively fighting, right? That's the difference. I don't care. I don't give a fuck what you yell in your town square. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in seeing you blown up just for screaming, death to Hal Sparks. Like, that doesn't interest me, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying, your numbers up. That's the rule, right? And that's okay. I think most people understand that, right?
Yeah.
But in this particular instance, you know, the Roseannes, the Dennis Millers, arguably the Tucker Carlsons of the world, this switch went off in their fucking head that either was like, in the case of Dennis and Roseanne, it was like a panic response that, it was totally fight or flight. I'll flee while you fight, which is exactly what they wanted. And then in the case of Tucker Carlson, it was like, now's the time. Now we can use this as a way of demonizing the people I fucking hate. I've hated them all along, and now I can use this, against them.
That's the key. That's the
Right.
key, though. He hated him all along.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that Roseanne has been a racist forever.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is not something that it's like you waited until 9/11 before you started screaming about how horrible the Muslim world was.
Right.
But I have a pretty good feeling that she was probably that way before that. I believe that before that she was absolutely anti-Jewish. I mean, now, and that's the thing about Donald Trump, is that Donald Trump, apparently some people believe that Donald Trump give them the ability to be their worst versions of themselves.
Right.
That if Donald Trump can come out here and spew the hatred that he does, well, then why can't I? If Donald Trump can come out here and can get crowds with thousands upon thousands of people to come and listen to him spew that same bullshit, well, then maybe I can do it too.
Maybe I'm not alone.
Yeah, maybe I'm not alone. But I mean, it's just, to me, I hate to see.
Yeah.
I hate to see people attacked. There's bad in everything. We got fucking police officers in this country who obviously don't know how to put a black person in handcuffs unless they shoot him 5 times before that. We've got real hatred in this country too. And
you know what? It's interesting. I'm curious. I don't know if you've seen I believe it's on Netflix. There's a documentary about the Oklahoma City bombing that goes into sort of what led up to it. And I don't think it's interesting that I think a lot of people go, Timothy McVeigh, anti-federal government activist, read the Turner Diaries, which I vaguely heard something about is racist, but basically it's like this fear that they're going to take our guns and it's authoritarian. And so he was in his own way kind of deluded and pushing back. Never mind the fact that he was effectively led to the Turner Diaries by the KKK and white supremacists, specifically domestic terrorists based on a racist ideal of what America should be, right? So make no mistake, the Oklahoma City bombing, and I recommend people look at the documentary on it because they go into sort of the lead up, why he chose the day he did, the day before Hitler's birthday, and the day that they were supposed to execute this guy who was running the KKK at one point, and he killed a cop, got the death penalty for it, and that was the day he was to be put to death. Like, he chose that day specifically as a revenge point. They also were looking at it in terms of, he was at the Branch Davidian compound, and you'll notice that the Branch Davidians were lily fucking white. There was not, David Koresh's idea of a mountaintop religious group did not involve all nations. He was not finding a United Colors of Benetton future for Jesus's children at all. This motherfucker was so racist. That's why they were basically going to practice inbreeding while the rest of the world burned. That was what he was, he's going to fuck the daughters of his own kids, in the future. That's what he was doing and planning. Like, fucking awful. And who was there sitting on his car crying tears for David Koresh? Timothy McVeigh.
Wow.
And when we talk about the kind of history of that racist idea, the Great Replacement Theory and all that kind of shit that Tucker Carlson and some of these assholes talk about, that's where it came from. That's the lineage of that belief system. And the fact that it's antithetical to what the United States stands for, and I'm one of the proudest things for me about America is it doesn't show up on anybody's 23andMe, right? Irish might, British might, Russian might, Chinese might, Indian, you know, like any number of countries, right? But America, nope. Nobody has a 23andMe and says, "I as an American." You're clearly genetically American because
Yeah.
the country's based on an idea, not a race, not a specific, you know, lineage. So there seems to be with Tucker Carlson, with Stephen Miller, with the way you know Roseanne talks about this, certainly Laura Ingraham and others. There's I see the tendrils of this shit and them reacting to this like Biden thinks Americans are the enemy. Biden thinks that domestic, you know, that white supremacists are the most dangerous people, you know, in the world, whatever. Never mind, they always say domestic threat. The most dangerous domestic threat is internal
Yeah.
because the outside people can't get in. We watch those fuckers, but we have laws that keep us from watching the ones who grew up here. And that's why we can't just do automatic searches. We don't have FISA for those guys, which we shouldn't. And it's ironic that, you know, McVeigh and all these assholes were fighting against a tyrannical government when they benefited, just like Trump, benefited from due process and needing a warrant. Evidence against McVeigh was thrown out simply because there wasn't a predicate for the warrant to get some of these things that would have led to his other people who contributed beyond Nichols and the others, right? Those people, there's a bunch of, like, there's probably 5 people that helped him blow up a bunch of people, including 19 toddlers that got away with it because they benefited from how tyrannical our government isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I mean,
nerve.
I tell you. Yeah, I tell you, I think back on those. I was actually in the Sapper Leader course when the Branch Davidian stuff
Mm-hmm.
went down. Oh wow, you know it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. They only would let us know a few little things about it because we were focusing on what we were
Right.
doing. But
I think the conversation about the Branch Davidian compound was all wrong because if you watch, there's also a long form documentary about that as well, and I recommend people like if you can find a long form documentary about these things that really goes into it, that's what you want to look at, not a couple of stories or short little blurbs or 7-minute things on fucking YouTube. You want somebody who dives into it. And here's the thing about the Branch Davidians. Whatever you think about them being polygamous, fucking internal, child rapists, you can dilute yourself into thinking he wasn't doing that. You can dilute themselves into thinking, well, religion should have its own practice thing and they were living up on a hill and not bothering anybody. You can believe all that shit all you want, but here's what you can't disagree with. They were stockpiling grenades. I don't care about fucking, right to bear arms and all that kind of shit. And people can back and forth in the fucking 90s and early 2000s all you want about assault weapons versus not assault weapons. A fucking grenade is an anti-personnel device designed to kill people in a giant circle around it as best just by throwing fucking baseballs. And little kids can be trained to chuck them. So that's what drove them to finally do it. The news that they were stock, and they were. That was one of the reasons why the part of the building exploded. They had a fucking box of grenades.
Yeah, wow.
Right. So nobody talks about that. Most people talk about, well, there was shooting and some people shot back, and why'd they show up in the first place? Fucking grenades. That's why.
Well, and also, they had a significant amount of assault, weapons.
Yes. Certainly.
But to me, the same thing. It's like this similar way with them is the same thing with the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Those leaders absolutely get people below them that are not as smart as they are, and they dupe them into moving forward to doing the things that they did. And I hate to say it, but none of us can look and say that there will never be another Timothy McVeigh.
Right.
I mean, we can find another Timothy McVeigh tomorrow.
Right.
We've got a lot.
It is hard. I will say it is harder to do because a lot of the things that he benefited from and a bunch of those folks did, and they were doing a lot of paper trail shit back and forth, is that a good portion of people are so technologically savvy. On the one hand, they can connect to more of these people. On the other hand, they think they can, that Telegram and WhatsApp and all these kind of things are, will hide all of their shit, and that they won't be found out. Or right, they really believe that the onion browsers that allow them to look at the dark web and stuff like that don't have gaping holes in them. These dumb motherfuckers get caught all the time trying to
Yeah.
download the worst of the worst kind of shit, and it's always bomb making instructions, child porn, and ghost gun switches and shit like that. They all at the same time. None of these motherfuckers ever just do one. It's super weird. And largely, by the way, some of these assholes pay. This is what crypto is all about. They pay for their terrorist endeavor that they're going to do by selling drugs and child porn. That's one of the ways they do it, because they're on a down low with a bunch of super awful fucking people, and
Yeah.
they use crypto to trade in it. So the real quick, because I want to remind everybody, turnleftpack.org is the majors organization. Please go to the website and check it out and get yourself some merch and support them, because I personally believe, and Major, you know this, that if you have a chance to sit down and speak eloquently, intelligently, and conversationally with people in a lot of red districts and go, hey man, I'm not the enemy here, and you line up all the things Joe Biden's doing to benefit these people versus what Donald Trump blew off while he was in office, it's hard for them to push back on that kind of stuff. And if they know you're not there to go, aha, just to fuck you, but like, hey man, I want what you say you want, and Biden's delivering it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that there's a lot of people. I mean, that's another thing in terms of people are starting to see. I mean, there's still a lot of people that refuse. We're going to have Roseanne bars all over the place. But
Mm-hmm.
make no mistake about it, there are videos coming out almost every single time Trump has another rally where significant people are starting to really open their eyes. They're starting to realize that this is nothing but a daggone scam. I mean, you got people that were leaving a rally, the last Trump rally that Trump had, saying, he makes us look bad. He's embarrassing us now. So
Right.
I mean, to
It's
me,
happening.
I mean, I'm hoping. I believe that there are more and more people waking up. I believe that people are realizing right now. They're looking at Donald Trump and they're seeing this guy when he's just absolutely getting drugged through the coals, and there's nobody can have any defense for this because evidence is being used that's really quite damning to
Right.
Donald Trump. And I think that there are people that are waiting. There are some people that have been interviewed that said, "Oh, well, we don't care. We don't care that he was found guilty. We don't care that he lies and steals. We just don't care. We like him because
Right.
he says all kinds of horrible things about people that we don't like, particularly brown and to black people."
Right.
But I'm telling you, I believe every day that more people are waking up.
Well, there's a weird, again, we've dealt with some of this, like what I would call the pro-Hamas crowds on the Columbia campuses and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I call them specifically that because if they really gave a fuck about the sort of oppressed versus oppressor situation that they decry, they would have said something about Sudan. They would be supporting, Ukraine against Russia. They would have gone, because way more people have died in that conflict and have been dying for a couple of years, but they didn't get out on the street because either Jews weren't involved in a particular Middle East fight that they have an interest in, or the fact that Zelensky's Jewish and they're like, aha. Like, there's a bunch of like YouTube conspiratorial horse shit that's in there, and that's a conversation for another time. But in the case of Trump, even his support for the Jewish people or Israel in his way lines up with this weird evangelical Marjorie Taylor Greene, future prophecy idea that we got to support the Jews just so long as we can get them back in Israel, and then Jesus will show up and kill them all for not believing he's the Messiah. That's the trials of Armageddon and the fight that will happen, and Jesus will just wave his hand and they'll all drop dead. And that's why they think he doesn't fucking care. I mean, he likes them because he thinks they're good with money and he wants them hired to be his money counters. Like, he's that gross. He doesn't
Yeah.
have any depth of thought. But the people that project onto him what they want to occur, that's what they think. That's what Marge and her crowd think. Like, get the Jews back in Israel, support Israel's existence, because one day the Jesus switch will be thrown and they're all going to die in one spot.
I mean, to me, That's what you could expect from somebody like Marge the Trainwreck Green.
Right.
Uh, wow. I mean,
Oh,
it just it amazes me, man. I just it amazes me how some of these people, I would have thought that Marge the Trainwreck Green would have been pretty much kicked to the curb after like the first quarter that she
mhm,
was a standing member in Congress because of her stupidity. And I mean, she's an embarrassment.
right.
She just happens to run in an area where people would rather vote for the worst white person over the best black person.
Right.
And that's
Well,
exactly what happened in the
it's it,
last election with Marcus
yeah.
Flowers.
Well, and also with Marge, there is like this. She came in as part of the QAnon wave, and a bunch of disinterested people who were in the Trump situation, where she kind of rode in on the coattails of that idea, right? And she knew fuck all about politics. It was like, we need more outsiders, and so some people just picked people who had no history or no capability, hadn't learned how to fucking do any, how stuff matters, hadn't even had a business that relies on, you know, return customers being, under a subscription where you have to keep supplying to this person, on the regular, or a publicly traded company where you have to answer to stockholders or a board of directors. Like, none of them even do that. A lot of them are just home proprietary, like, if I don't like you, fuck, get out of my store. That's not how a country works. And that's how
Right.
it is, though, how they react to people they don't like that are citizens. Let's
Yeah.
be abundantly clear. So
Yeah.
and in her in particular, so the reason I think she took off is because initially she was the biggest fundraiser, in this firebrand idea. She and Matt Gaetz were the two biggest fundraisers for the Republican House that they had at the time, which is should tell you something about how low the fundraising is in general when Trump got elected, how that dropped off. That these two guys
Yep.
popped up. It's kind of like after like home studios and record labels, kind of switched places in the importance of the music industry. What it took to have a #1 record for about 8 years, like all these like little bands were doing this because no big band, they weren't hiring and paying for big bands to do it. Like there was no money structure for it. Same thing in the Republican Party. In her case, she's been kicked out of the Freedom Caucus for calling Boebert a little bitch on the floor of the House. It wasn't that she called her a little bitch and almost got into a fight with her in the fucking ladies' restroom
Yeah.
right outside. It was that she called her a little bitch within
On the
earshot of a bunch of other fucking people. She's been
Yeah.
bounced because of that. And so on the one hand, it's nice to know that appearances are still important to these fuckers, right? If they lose that, then all is lost. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Fucking call her a bitch. I don't care. Call all women bitches. Like that. If that's where they go, we're truly screwed in terms of that party salvaging itself, or any conservative movement acting like they want to be part of shit ever again.
Yeah.
They're just going to be a warring party. So that's a good sign. But they bounced her from the Freedom Caucus for that, and her fundraising dropped the fuck off. Well, guess what? It didn't pick up with somebody else. It didn't hop over to Boebert. It didn't hop over to Matt Gaetz. As a matter of fact, Matt Gaetz, who's the other top donor, what the fuck happened to him? Well, that ethics charge happened. His fundraising took a shit. The two of them tried to, double bill it to bring back the magic. That failed. Remember their big fucking tour? That was supposed to be, oh shit, here they come.
Yeah.
They're
Yep.
going to raise all this fucking money. And he scuttled, and this is what drove them apart ultimately. He scuttled McCarthy trying to stop the ethics investigation. You know, rat fuck about the budget or 12 different bills or any of that shit.
Yeah.
He was trying
Yeah.
to stop it, and it didn't work. And that's
Yeah.
why, that's why they're such a fucking mess, because nobody knows who anybody's for or against or whatever, because they're not interested in governing. You don't give a fuck.
I really hope that we do. I want to
Oh.
see him removed from the House floor
Oh, he's
in
good. Yeah.
handcuffs. And oh, by the way, remember, if you think that people like Mark Mullen, really had a problem with these naked pictures of these young girls, just know that it wasn't until he ousted McCarthy that all of them all of a sudden
Yeah.
thought that it was horrible that he was showing pictures of these
Right.
young naked girls.
So offended. I have a daughter. Yeah. Was she just born, you dumb motherfucker? Because you didn't give a shit that you had a daughter 6 months ago when he was walking around showing it. You didn't give a shit then.
exactly. He's talking. You're living here telling us now that Matt Gaetz would stand on the House floor talking about taking erectile dysfunction medicine,
And
crushing it with friggin' energy drinks, so that he could go all night long at parties with kids.
yeah,
But Mike Mullen and the rest of them didn't have a problem with that. They probably laughed about it, and it was like locker room talk. But
yep,
then when he daggone ousted Kevin McCarthy, now all of a sudden Matt Gaetz is a freaking horrible person that preys on people and all this
right.
bullshit. Their outrage is always a
So fucking
fucking bunch
fake.
of bullshit.
Yeah,
It's always fake. And
so
yet
fake.
now all of a sudden they care about freaking young kids being trafficked. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, right. Especially like like the girl that's testifying against him, and that he's going to be deposed. I actually think there's a very strong chance he'll be removed before the election, and that'll end up giving us the fucking House, which would be so fucking hilarious. Because well, we just bring a bill to the floor. The Republicans will have to fucking choke the shit out of themselves because we'll pass the border bill. That's it. Like Hakeem Jeffries, I swear to God, like, can you imagine? Matt Gaetz has to step down because the ethics committee bounces him like fucking George Santos. Hakeem Jeffries is now the speaker. He brings the border bill to the floor for a vote. It goes up to the Senate. They strip out some of the shit they didn't like, just minor things that they had given to the House just to try and get to the fucking floor. Take it out. They send it back to him. He votes on it. It passes again. They send it back up to the Senate, and Biden signs a new fucking border bill in October. Like, oh my fucking God.
Ouch. Ouch.
And the weird part is that is absolutely possible.
Oh, please let that happen, because
I know.
so great. And yeah, I mean, I really do. Like Kevin McCarthy. No?
Yeah.
Yeah, McCarthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally is now. He's pulling all the stops out.
Yeah.
He's literally saying that. Well, I was, because Matt Gaetz was having sex with a 17-year-old. Once again, but once again, before you start looking at Kevin McCarthy and going, how so wrong he did, you knew about that, Kevin McCarthy.
Right.
You knew about it. You know about it.
You knew he was fucking a 17-year-old. Now,
only until you got ousted is when you had a problem.
Right. Now I will say, in McCarthy's defense, and this is just kind of the general workings of something, that the ethics charges against Gaetz started under McCarthy. That was one of the reasons, and because he can't start a legal proceeding, that's up to the state that it happened in, both whether it's Florida or Georgia, and the chances of that fucking happening are fairly slim, right? Yeah. Considering who runs, DeSantis running at that time, he's not going to scuttle one of the House members lowering the number in his own district, whose father, by the way, is well connected in the Republican Party in Florida, basically owns the Panhandle, because Gaetz is a second generation politician for all this outsider firebrand bullshit talk, and or Georgia has to file charges, and the Speaker of the House couldn't come out and go, this motherfucker's fucking a 17-year-old out there, because he would dirty up the jury pool. Maybe Gaetz gets off. So there's an element of, just like Chris Wray catches shit from Republicans all the fucking time for not wanting to comment on ongoing investigations, because if he does, which, by the way, they're hoping he does. They're hoping he does it. They're hoping he says something about a Jan 6er or something like that, so they go, he's tainted the jury pool. These people need to be released. They're trying to bait him into undermining that. That's it, plain and simple. And so McCarthy, more than anybody else in the House, maybe he was like, I'm gonna fucking call the ethics committee and tell them to send their findings right now, as opposed to when they're finished, to Georgia about this girl you brought there and fucked. Well, do this right now. You want to do this later? You want to do this now or later? Because I can do it right now, motherfucker. You're not harming anybody else underage right now, because we're keeping an eye on you, and you're allegedly married and all that kind of shit, and Nestor's gone to go live with his real parents or whatever the fuck that was. Yeah, right? You almost wonder if half of these stories were him trying to cover the Nestor story up, which was super, that was fucking weird. But McCarthy was basically saying, you vote my way or you fuck with me, we send this right over. So he's blackmailing him with a fait accompli, something he knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? But everybody else all the other ones who are either not on the ethics committee or don't have control over whether it gets impaneled, which is what McCarthy would be in charge of doing. All those other guys, abso-fucking-lutely. They were all running interference for this dickhead until he outlived his usefulness.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of crazy shit, man. A lot of crazy stuff.
It's
But
so
I hope we
good.
start to see. Yeah, I want to see this stuff come to fruition. I'm just excited. I'm hoping that, I believe that everybody's waking up. But like you said, if we actually have the ability, because here's another thing about what you're talking about Hakeem Jeffries taking back. If we're able to take back the House of Representatives, understand that one of the things that the plan with like RFK Jr., there are evidence out there saying that what they were wanting is they don't really support RFK Jr.
No.
But they do want RFK Jr. to take about 14 electoral college votes away from Joe Biden.
Right.
And we already know that the Republicans are actually supporting RFK Jr. because they know that if Donald Trump doesn't beat Biden, but Donald Trump gets enough electoral college votes, and RFK Jr. can take enough to keep Joe Biden from hitting the 270, then the House gets to select who the next president is. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying to basically hold things up, because they know that because that is a plan with them.
Agreed.
Because they know that Donald Trump is losing support. They know that he is absolutely getting embarrassed every day.
Yep.
But I believe it's already past that point that RFK Jr. and Trump are not going to be able to make it. They're becoming absolute buffoons. I mean, RFK Jr.'s entire family has said, "Yeah, we love him. He's our nephew, our cousin, our brother, but we absolutely would never vote for him because he's a colossal friggin' turd."
Yeah, he's a fuck up. And by the way, if you look at his backstory, go read his autobiography. He makes Hunter Biden look like a monk. In the like a 14th century monk who abstains from alcohol. Like, it's crazy, because that's another conversation for another time. I personally think, and I think a lot of our chat room is agreeing with this as well. And by the way, before I lose you, and Phil's going to be joining us in the next hour, but remind you, turnleftpack.org. Please check them out and understand that basket of deplorables idea that Hillary was talking about the unreachable maggots that are just off the fucking. They're past the border. We're not talking about those folks. We're talking about everybody who's been bullshitted by those people who might be able to come around and having a conversation with them, not vilifying them, talking to them like somebody who was engaged, who was conned, talking to someone who's like, they believed some weird cure for whatever disease they had was, in a magical cure. And you're really trying to go, hey, you need chemotherapy. You need real medicine. That if you can talk like that to them, you can reach some of these people. So that's super important. And turnleftpack.org is great at that, while not bullshitting about the threat that Trump is and maggots in general are.
Well, we appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you always bringing me on here. I go live every night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on OJetta Live on YouTube and Facebook. And one of our candidates that we're working with right now is Ike McCorkle, who is actually the one that's running against Lauren Boebert in the 4th Congressional District. And he's actually ahead in the polls.
Nice.
So start paying attention. And when you see some of these folks out there that are really out there fighting and they're actually, winning, that's not the time to say, we're not going to pay attention to that. That's the time we need to pour on the support for Ike McCorkle so that we can make sure that we send that troglodyte packing. So, brother,
I gotta say, she's gonna lose. Let me tell you, she's gonna lose, and it's gonna be so fun. And Marge, I think she's pissed about the Ukraine stuff because I think she sees her Russian funding drying up if they don't see results.
Yeah, and they're running commercials in Russia about how supportive Marge the Trainwreck Green is for them.
Right.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Kev Post and others are calling her Moscow Marge for a reason. Thank you so much, Major, for being on. Love you, brother. Appreciate the work you do, and keep at it.
Brother, I got love for you, man. You're hilarious. I think you're the smartest man in comedy. That's a fact. There is no taking that away. And I always enjoy being on your show. I know that every once in a while I get all this crazy stuff, but the person that works with always contacts me. Love her dearly. She's phenomenal. You have a great group of people that support you.
Agreed.
I always enjoy being on your show, brother. Anytime, let me know. I'm always going to try to be there.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it so much. All right,
Yes,
we'll see you
brother.
again.
Hey, boy.
Turnleftpack.org. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. And Phil is joining us in the background right on time. Look at this. This is just like we're just hot swapping it today. I can hear him in the background. Hopefully, I'm going to try and enter the thing in behind the scene. Hopefully, because I only have one guest in there, that it'll not crash. Please, God, Lord Almighty, please don't take it. Okay, look, it seems to be working, but I can always tell when it's going to fail in that moment. And it seems all right. Phil will be joining us in just a second. There he is. Ooh, it's such a like we've got a much bigger frame, which is very nice. Very nice.
New camera.
Yeah, I know. It's impressive. We need to send a package to I'll bring you in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. Philip Ittner, live from Kiev. There he is. Look at that. In shiny detail. Look at us all 4K in it the fuck out these days.
Yeah.
On the set of your new studio, try to fit more of that in there. Your podcasting studio for On the Edge. There it is. Fantastic. First of all, hi, how are you? On a personal level, again, we're always concerned. We've all
good.
adopted you.
Today's the last few days, actually. Of course, with first the Congress, then the Senate, and now the president signing this aid bill. It's been great. And overshadows everything else.
Sure.
Good day today with the announcement that within hours we expect to start getting ammunition. That's the most important thing.
Yep.
And this again, the most important thing is we got the aid package, and that is just it's going to change the course of the war, not only because of the aid package itself, but because it ratifies the fact that America is on board with supporting Ukraine, which will enable our other allies to feel comfortable or more comfortable in also standing by Ukraine. So there'll be a ripple effect. There is one dark cloud that hangs over this a little bit for me, and that's to see the reaction of the rabid anti Zelensky, anti-Ukraine, anything that Biden does, of course, is the right wingers and the guys who are just knee-jerk anti-Ukraine, and to see their at first it was, I have to admit, there was a little bit of schadenfreude going on, and I was a little bit tickled to see them spinning out of control, and I'm still tickled to see the Russians.
Yes,
it's fun to see the Russians. It's sad to see our own people spinning out of control. It was funny for a little bit, but then it got to a point where it's like, you're talking about this country and these people as if it doesn't matter. And the crocodile tears of if we give them more weapons, they'll continue to fight. Well, yeah, of course they will, because this is an existential threat, and they're fighting for their sheer survival. So of course they will. So the narrative that they try to excuse their isolationism and their anti-democratic, respect for our allies and for our treaties that we signed, for favor of anything that Biden does is bad. And this kind of like, $60 billion, that's our money, we should be using it. First off, $60 billion is a drop in the bucket. Secondly, as we've discussed, much of that money goes to defense workers, guys that are
well, that's what Chuck Grassley was talking about on the floor of the Senate before the vote yesterday. Chuck Grassley is going, the mortar shells made, the artillery shells made in Iowa are the best in the world and are so much more reliable than everybody. And he's right, they are. And it's and that's what I guess margin this crowd were trying to attack in that regard, and it did not work. It was a
But it was sad to see. And I'll get to Marjorie in a minute here. But it was sad to see, and not only sad to see within the corridors of power, where we know that Russia has infiltrated into our body politic.
Yeah.
But it was sad to see. I mean, I know I shouldn't for my mental health, but I do still go on social
Hmm.
media, and to see some of the things that were being said about, like, let's nuke Kiev, or I hope that, since
Right.
we're giving weapons to the Ukrainians, I hope that that means Russia will take off the kid gloves, and we'll really
Yeah,
get
that's
into a
the
fight
Scott
and
Ritters of the
kill us.
world. Right. Yeah.
Exactly, the
Yeah.
Scott
Yeah.
Ritters of the world, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's sad to see. I mean, I again, I took a moment of kind of
Hmm.
Schadenfreude to see them kind of losing their minds, because they've
I'm.
been so wrong on this topic.
Yeah.
But then when it kind of
Yeah.
is now reaching critical mass, it's sad to see.
Yeah, I don't know that it's reaching critical mass. As a matter of fact, the louder they are and the more like kind of brutal they are, it shows that they're convincing fewer and fewer people. In the case of Scott
I hope
Ritter,
so.
I have no concern. I'm good with siding with Biden on this versus the Scott Ritters of the world, who are, I guess, we're losing the pedo vote. So boo fuckity who. But I will say, to your point, the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak yesterday said that or a day before yesterday, because of this funding going through and this kind of like renewed doubling down the United States,
Yes.
that their economy is going on a war footing in terms of its production of military stuff to benefit Ukraine and to make sure that Finland and Sweden and by the way, when they do it, just like we do it, part of it is arms, right? In the case of, we have the enormous capacity to create shells and all that kind of stuff, is one of the factory areas of the United States that was never really outsourced. But the technology aspect of it that allows for the drone warfare and all that kind of stuff that's increasingly more important comes from the United States and the UK. And when they talk about doing that, that means, you know, lifting that technology up to that level of importance as well. So it's
Mhm.
beyond the economic benefit of, them, selling their military wares to an ally who's in trouble and that kind of stuff, and that eventually pays them back and then helps them grow their industry. Beyond that, the stuff itself again leads to the lenses in your phone and the processor in your phone and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's just like NASA, military funding, and those kind of situations is another way that countries use to goose up their consumer electronics route and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So,
drone technology is going to go through the roof, and it
yep,
will sift down to civilian population.
that's
Well,
right.
I don't want to take away from the enormous good news
Hmm.
that this is, and it is good news. I should stay off social media more than I
Hmm.
do, but sometimes, you they're saying such crazy stuff.
Right.
It's just like, so let's focus on before I focus on the positive, though. One more quick thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Hmm.
Um, if there is better proof that there is somebody who is coaching her,
Yeah.
somebody from the Russians, the fact that she has fixated on Transcarpathia
Yeah.
and the Hungarian language being spoken in Transcarpathia.
Hmm.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has no idea what
Right. But
Transcarpathia is,
that's the
or
new
what,
talking point from Moscow.
and it has been fed to her. That's
Yeah.
that's the thing that I take away from that.
Hmm.
And what I find most disturbing is she didn't bring that up herself. Somebody gave that to her
Yep.
to bring up and to make a talking point. And that someone has got to have connections to the GRU or the
Hmm.
Kremlin or whatever it is. But this woman is compromised by the Russians. And so many of our body politic is under
Hmm.
attack by Russia. And one of the things I've seen in this kind of reactionary corner of the internet, where
Oops,
they're
hold
like,
on.
6 billion, gosh darn. One of the things that I've seen from that is this, like, our politicians are so corrupt, and our politicians are wasting our money, and that's our taxpayers' money. That all of that is ignoring the fact that while there is in DC, there always has been, sadly there probably always will be, corruption goes with governance. It's unfortunate, it needs to be constantly
Hmm.
combated, but it's like prostitution, it's never going away.
Right.
um Actually, you could say it's the same issue. Uh, but our body politic has been infiltrated by the Russians, and we're seeing that with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're even seeing it with as it sifts out to these kind of guys who are reactionary, that they are basing so much of their information and so much of their ire um, because of this whole infiltration by Russian intelligence and information warfare. So we got to keep the ball on that. We got to keep our eye on it, and we really need to
Hmm.
be more proactive.
Can I?
So putting
Yeah.
that all behind,
Hmm.
putting all the kind of like concerns that I have, and I want to get back to a happy place. So my happy place is there are Bradleys that are disembarking in places like the Baltics, places like Germany, being brought through Germany down into Poland. There's ammunition that has already been stockpiled in Poland, and President Biden was 100% right. It's not a
Hmm.
surprise for him to say we're going to start moving shells in within hours of me signing this, which means that we will see ammunition getting to the front lines in a matter of days, and that's
Yep.
going to make all the difference in the world.
Right.
That's all really good stuff. The ATACMS systems that are going to be coming here, the Kerch Bridge is coming down.
Yep.
But also importantly, um, I don't know when they're going to take the Kerch Bridge down, but they will take the Kerch Bridge down.
Yep.
But they're also going to be striking, and they must, and they will, a railway line that is being built from mainland Russia, cutting through Ukrainian territory that's been conquered, Mariupol down along the coastline to then get into Crimea. That railway system, that's going to be untenable. There's
Yeah.
no way they're going to be able to continue to build that. And that, you and I have talked about this many times. I have said repeatedly that I do not think a body count is the issue when it
No.
comes to convincing the Russians that they are losing and will lose this war, because
Hmm.
they have a tradition, a history, and a capacity that they're very proud of. Cynically, sadly, that we can absorb the pain of
The
losing
death. Right.
so many of our men, because that's what Russia does.
Hmm.
Russians sacrifice for the state. So that's not that metric. When you look at it from, is it going to be 50,000 that's going to break the Russian back? Well, that line was crossed 100,000, 200,000. I think while I also suspect there is ultimately, because no country
Yeah.
can sustain that
No.
kind of loss indefinitely. But um, I think more importantly than looking at the body count, look at the idea of the strategic gains, because they're willing to lose men.
Hmm.
They're not willing to lose their pride and their
And territory.
prestige
Right.
and their
Yeah.
territory. That's
Yeah. It's
right, which
embarrassing.
is tied into
On a
their
happy,
sense of
yeah.
empire.
On a happy note, I'll just like it's always good to play something that will irritate the living shit out of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And
Oh,
here it
please.
is, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ukrainian flags being waved on the floor of the House after the
Uh,
passage, and this has like her response to it. Mike Johnson's House of Representatives is so proud to work for Ukraine, not the American people. It's despicable, was her response. This is from her Telegram channel. She posted this. This is from
Mhm.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's phone. Now, one of the other things you might notice is that she's not seated in the chamber right then. She basically came back in to watch the vote pass and went, fuck you. And she's just kind of, I turned the audio off, but she's basically just booing in the background. And I got to say, that's so lovely.
Pathetic.
It's so nice. It's so
That
nice.
is nice. I got to admit
It's
that
nice
is
that,
nice.
yeah, why
But
she's
then you
what
know what else? Did you see what else happened? I think it was yesterday.
I don't know,
Um
her posting the names of all the Republicans who voted
yeah,
against, voted for the bill. That's super
right.
great too.
That's great.
Um,
No, what struck me was in reaction. This is how savvy the Ukrainians are when it comes to messaging. The very next day, when she was like, Ukrainian flags on the floor of the house,
mhm.
the Ukrainians are like, "Thank you, America," and they started flying American flags on the floor of the Rada,
Right.
the
Yeah.
lower house of Parliament. And I mean, if that wasn't
It's such
a
a great
coordinated,
dunk. Right.
conscious decision to be
Of
like,
course.
"Oh, you flew our flags and your crazies are upset about it? we'll fly your flag. Tit for
Right.
tat. Thanks, guys.
Well,
And
they
it's
also
just
know they
genius.
do.
So smart.
These people know that this is a Russian talking point.
Yeah.
This is literally a talking point sent to the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world by Russia, and they're like, okay, um, you know,
Yeah.
then if they're going to use this, we will use it against them. We will turn it on them.
Yeah.
Um,
This is I mean, that's great messaging. It just shows how sophisticated and intelligent the Ukrainians are. And then when it comes to what do we got here? Is that
that's
the
the Russian
Mariupol?
oil. That's the oil. No, that's
Oh,
inside
that's the
Russia.
oil.
That's the it's an oil processing plant that's on fire. That was hit with a drone
Yeah.
from Ukraine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the chattering class and the mouthpieces of the state government media run
Mm-hmm.
sorry, government state media about recognize that these attackums that they could hit this town, they could hit this town, they could hit this town, and they're freaking out.
Right.
You oh, poor baby,
Mm-hmm.
you've been slaughtering Ukrainians, you've been devastating towns
Yeah.
and cities. Now
Boo
that the shoe is
fuckity
on the other
who.
foot, boo fuckity who. Mhm.
Right.
So
Um.
I love when they freak out.
Yeah. This is and it's
Those attackums are going to be great. Those
yes.
attackums, it's a big, big, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
We'll see
and
how
that's
that.
the interesting thing is that they're still going to use the drones that they have, but the attackums will be good for stuff that are mobile, for example, and
Yeah.
or that are bigger and you need more of a payload to knock them out, like the Kerch Bridge or that rail
Hmm.
line
And
specifically.
the distance
Yeah.
doesn't hurt.
Yes.
And I mean, they're going to get more HIMARS. They're going to get more Patriots,
Hmm.
which will be fantastic. There's another aspect to it as well, and I know I'm a little bit scatterbrained here, but there's so much to discuss. Is
Right.
um, they they openly stated, the Russians, that they intended to take a town called Chasiv Yar,
Hmm.
which is a strategically important as much as any city in Donbass is strategically important.
Right.
It's this town. It's the next one along the road down from Bakhmut. Now, I've been to Chasiv Yar, and folks who want to go to my channel and check it out, um, Chasiv Yar it's rough, man. It's
Hmm.
been pounded for a long time, but they wanted to take before the bill was passed in the House. And again, we're all over the place a little bit here, but now it's not time to now it's the time to also interject. I totally think this took the Russians by surprise. I mean,
Yes.
Putin went screaming back to the Kremlin in the middle of the night in the motorcade. They didn't think this was going to pass. They have been
Right.
taken by surprise. They have openly stated it is their intent to take Chasiv Yar um, before either May 7th or May 9th. May 7th being the inauguration of Vladimir Putin, May 9th being the Victory Day, which is on the on the Russian calendar.
Yeah.
Victory Day is about one of the biggest holidays in Russia because of it's one of their most seminal moments in history was their defeating Nazis. So
Hmm.
they wanted to take Chasiv Yar by the 9th as this kind of symbolic seizure. It ain't going to happen. There's no way they
No.
take Chasiv Yar
Right.
now that there's going to be a bunch of 115 millimeter shells uh, given to the Ukrainian artillery. They're not going to take Chasiv Yar by the 9th.
Right.
I'd be willing to put money on it.
Hmm.
War again, fickle mistress, but I absolutely don't. And then they also were before it passed in and the aid package was passed in Congress, were crowing about the possibility of either demolishing or conquering Kharkiv, and they even went so far as we saw horrible video of them taking out the TV tower there, the
Right.
radio communications tower there, which is sad to see. It was very traumatic.
Hmm.
But Kharkiv is a fortress city. I've been to Kharkiv as well, and there's no way they're taking Kharkiv
Right.
anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, I saw today that the head of Ukraine's national guard, basically the equivalent of their national guard, said he believes it's going to if they try to take Kharkiv, it will take them at least, in his words, and consider your source.
Right.
He said it's going to take a year at least for them to. It's Ukraine's second largest city. It's been mostly evacuated, of course, because they're under fire and they're very close to the Russian border. But what matters when it comes to Kharkiv and this is the size of it. It's a city built
Right.
for 1.5 million people, most of whom have evacuated. Yes, we're down to maybe 300, 500,000 people. So the vast majority has evacuated from Kharkiv.
Right.
But it's a city built for 1.5, which means every apartment building, every office block, every shopping center, every place can be turned into a fortress, and they will make Russia pay for
Right.
every. And this is also, by the way, in my mind, uh, kind of an exercise in futility, because it ain't going to happen. They're
Mhm.
not. They're not going to march on Kharkiv. They don't have
Right.
the capacity.
Right.
They can't
And
take a
they'll
place
show
like
that they don't have the
Krasnodar.
capacity, which is even
Yes.
worse, because they can still
Yes.
pretend they have some reserves, they have some way of pushing, and if they show their hand, you'll realize they got a couple of deuces and that's it. And that's been going on for a long time. Like, basically, that's the lesson of this war, is that Russia is always holding a shit hand. They bluff the fuck out of everybody for a long time, right?
Mhm.
So, like,
And
that,
then the nuke threat comes out. And then the
right,
nuke threat. It always goes back to the nuke threat.
right,
Whenever they start talking about nukes, they're in trouble because it's their go-to.
yes,
Um, and they're not going to nuke anything.
hmm,
And if they did, it'd be over. They're not going to, as far as like a population center is concerned, they're not going to nuke Kiev. Kiev is the birthplace of Rus.
yeah,
It is
right.
where the
You can't
lava
draw.
is
You can't
located.
have the Ruska Mir if you've destroyed
If you don't, if
the
you've
launch
destroyed,
point. Right.
it would be like the international Jewish community blowing up the Wailing Wall, or
Yeah.
a Muslim community going for
Mecca or Medina. Right.
Mecca or Medina. It's deeply tied into their identity, but on both sides.
Hmm.
They're not going to do anything, but they will saber rattle. They'll
Hmm.
make everybody scared,
They'll give
and
it a
that's the
yeah.
point.
Yeah. They'll
Yeah.
give it the old flunked out of college
When
try.
Hey, remind me, Hal, when we were fighting those wars, and we kind of were losing, and we knew the writing was on the wall, we were losing them, say, Vietnam,
Hmm.
or, Iraq, or Afghanistan. When did we start threatening to nuke them?
Right.
Do you remember?
Yeah. Not
When did
ever.
we when
Right.
we were like, "Hey, we're losing this war in Afghanistan. We better nuke the hell out of Kabul." When
That's
did
right.
that happen, Hal?
Yep. Or Iraq.
Or let's keep
Or even
Baghdad, right? I mean, for
yeah.
God's sakes, the only time that we actually did threaten to nuke something, it was MacArthur in Korea, and Truman pulled him out of there for even suggesting it.
Right.
So for the Russians to have this knee jerk, like, "Don't mess with us, we got nukes," it's
Right.
like, you're pathetic and sad.
Yeah.
You're a sad, sad, cowardly,
Yeah. It's absurd.
yeah, you're
And
a
the idea that,
patronizer.
like, don't make us
It's
mass
there.
murder. Like, you got to let us
Well,
kill
that too,
a
right.
small group of people, or we'll mass murder everyone. That's not a negotiating point. Fuck you. And the idea that you think that's what you're bringing to the floor, um, is like, that in and of itself should be the one selling point that talks everybody out of their support for Russia in this circumstance. Right? That's their fucking fallback. I mean, it's the kind of, honest to God, you know who that's the strategy of? That BTK. BTK came into a home, tied up the parents, suffocated a child, took the other child down to the basement, and told the child, if you scream, I'm going to kill your parents. Told the parents, if you don't make a noise, I won't kill the child, and did anyways. That's what Russia's talking about. Like, I will annihilate the whole family if you don't let me do what I want to do. And when you negotiate with somebody, you get what happened in that situation. That's like, or it's a fucking bluff in this case, which I think largely it is. But
Of
like,
course.
good lord, that's the tactic. That's the tactic. It's the tactic of a home invader and a family annihilator. That's what they're selling. And the idea that somebody would go, hey, they're hurting. This is just something, their backs up against the wall. That's just what you
We've
do.
we've painted them into a corner. What option did we give them? Well,
But
it's not
to
our
but to
responsibility.
murder,
Yeah.
tens of thousands, if not
Because
hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
and I've heard you express this sentiment before, and I will back it up.
Hmm.
at some point you're responsible for your own actions. So I
Yeah.
don't care if you are feel yourself painted into a corner. At the end of the day, if a nuke flies, your finger is on that trigger.
Right.
You are responsible. I don't care what you think drove you to do it. Every mass murderer, every, you know, killer thinks that they're justified. No,
Mhm.
you pull a trigger on a nuke, you're done. You're
Mhm.
done, and there's no justification for it. So it's really quite pathetic. They know they're in trouble. I think they
Mhm.
do. I really do. I think they're starting to
Mhm.
twig to the fact that
Right.
they're in real trouble, and at some point they won't be able to hide it from their people.
Right.
And it's oh, look at him go.
Yep. Try to put this in here. There you go. This
It's
is
so good.
that's
So
him.
good.
That's the video they posted
There
of
it
him
is.
signing it. Um um
Gonna change the world.
yep.
It's gonna change the world. For the better.
Yep.
For the better. I mean, I hate to keep referencing things that maybe I should have warned you I
I'm
was going
just
to talk
playing
about
this
this, but
video on a loop because it
yeah, no,
irritates the
it's
Marjorie
great.
Taylor
Please
Greens of the
do.
world.
Please do. Please do. Um, the other thing, I don't know if you saw this recently, but a video was making the rounds of Timothy Schneider, who I just think is fantastic. And if I can get him on the pod, I
Mhm.
would love to talk to him.
Right.
By the way, just on a quick side note, we're getting some good guests. They're
Very
getting pinned
exciting.
down.
I'm for it.
Yeah, some really, really good guests. And the first one, it may not be the biggest name, but it will be a topic that I think is the most important. So I can't wait for folks to see it. It, it is imminent. I should have it out very, very soon. Um, but now that I've distracted myself and
Mhm.
taken away my train of thought, um, what was I talking with them
The attack
with
of
them
the
being in trouble? Oh no, Timothy Schneider, who I would love to
Timothy
have on my
Schneider, right.
podcast.
Yes.
There's a wonderful video of Timothy Schneider speaking in some sort of function where he says every empire has to go through the loss of empire. Every country has to go through the loss of empire for it to
To grow.
metamorphosize into a better nation. We
Right.
saw that, you saw that with the Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, they all lost empire and had to reassess their place with their neighbors, with the world, all the rest of it. It's probably very easy to find because it only came out within the last 2, 3, 4 days, that ballpark. But it's a really good speech by Schneider, and he's right. He's right. This ultimately, not that I particularly care because my I've thrown my lot in with the Ukrainians, and that's my priority. But I
Mhm.
still have Russian friends, and I don't.
Sure.
I genuinely hope for a better Russia, for a Russia that lives better for its own people and its own
Sure.
governance, and becomes
It
uh,
shouldn't
a,
be
a,
this
a
hard.
partner. No, it shouldn't, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't always be fearful of this major spoiler on the globe that is Russian Empire, Soviet Union, whatever the
Mhm.
current Russian, Putin's Russian Federation.
Right.
Um, it would be great for them and for everybody involved for them to take a good hard look in the mirror and decide who they are if they are not empire, and to kind of put to heel this concept of, well, we always have to be expanding because we're the great Russian um culture and society and all the rest of it, and
Mhm.
we always are under threat, so we always, for our own protection, have to be subjugating our neighbors. Um and and i i'm i genuinely hope that when they lose this war, that's what they do. First and foremost, though, they need to lose this war, and Ukraine needs to be free. So
Mhm.
that's the priority. But yeah,
Agreed. But
it's fascinating stuff, and we're witnessing history. We really are.
And now there's two ways that there is a pushback on what sort of Russia is up to. Let me see if I can make this page play out where you can see shit better. Um, but this is Anthony Blinken is in China right now.
Oh,
Um,
saw that.
Warning Beijing over support of Russia. So I don't know if people know this, but in December, Joe Biden signed sanctions on Chinese banks that were transferring money to Russia. And so that immediately shut down a bunch of money going to Russia. They were very pissed. It's one of the reasons why you saw the marges of the world getting all mad and freaked out. U.S. secretly sent to Ukraine, which is used as Russian airfield. Oh, that's cool. Is there a link for that, Andrea? Sorry, the link's not showing up on my thing. That's cool. I'll show you that in a moment if it comes up. But so what China did was that they started rerouting money through regional banks that are not hooked up to the SWIFT system. So internally, they have like these little regional banks, and then they have the big international banks where they do most of their trade. Those are in the SWIFT system, and they're in the international system. And so China doesn't want those banks kicked out because they're already on their heels, and it's kind of fucked. So what they did was they went, oh, absolutely, our big banks are not going to do this. Our Citibank, our like HSBC, any of those, they're not going to do this. And then they just shuffled the money over to these little regional banks and let them trade because they only do it in yuan. Now that screws Russia a little bit just because it's ridiculous that they can, again, the yuan, as far as Russia's concerned, is not a currency. It doesn't function as a reserve currency. It is a fucking yogurt card. It is Starbucks points. It is only good for things bought in the store on certain days. And that's a stupid way to do trade and try to shore up your currency. That's for goddamn sure. And so Anthony Blinken went over there to go, hey, we see you getting around these sanctions, and we're not buying it. So you can stop, or we will add your big banks to it because we will track the money that's coming out of your version of the Fed into the big banks and then straight to the smaller banks. We'll just assume that's how your system works because that's how our system works. And since you won't show us how your system works, you can't refute what we're saying about your economic system. That's one of the greatest things about an opaque authoritarian regime is that if you go, I think you're doing this, they can't prove you're not. It's the same thing it's the same problem the CIA has with Alex Jones. Like, they can't refute it because giving them any information can endanger lives and that kind of stuff. So you just got to sit back and take it. Same thing true of authoritarian regimes. If they say, no, we don't, we move our money through, shut the fuck up. You're like you can't, right? You can't operate that way. So Anthony Blinken go,
who's been talking?
Talking? Don't tell them how we really do it. Then we're truly fucked. Hilarious. So anyways, that's here we go. This is an article in, thanks for this, Andrea. This is breaking right now. New York Times is putting up a story, if it'll wake up. U.S. secretly shipped new long-range missiles to Ukraine. All
right, that explains, because I was just going to say something as well, is there's a Ukrainian member of parliament with whom I am friendly, and she must have seen this as well. She said, this is Kira Rudik, who is a member of the Ukrainian parliament. She said, ATACMS will be here by the end of the week.
Well, apparently they're wink, wink, nudge, nudge already there. According to this story, United States last week. Now, this might be they shipped them, but they haven't used them yet. That's the other thing. The United States last week secretly shipped a new long-range missile system to Ukraine, and Ukrainian forces immediately used the weapon to attack a Russian military airfield in Crimea last Wednesday. And Russian troops in the country's southeast overnight on Tuesday, according to a senior U.S. official.
I remember that.
The United States previously supplied Ukraine with a version of the ATACMS armed with a widespread cluster munitions that could travel 100 miles. We just didn't give them the missile version that goes with it, remember?
Right.
But Ukraine has long coveted the system's longer range version with a range of 190 miles. That can reach deeper into occupied Ukraine, including Crimea, a hub of Russian air and ground forces and supply nodes for Moscow's forces in the country's southeast. Overnight Tuesday, Ukraine used the long-range missiles to strike Russian troops in the port city of Berdyansk in the Sea of Azov. The senior U.S. official said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss operational matters last Wednesday, social media accounts in Ukraine, and I saw this last time too, but we couldn't figure out what they'd done it with. Everybody was back and forth. Was it a drone? Whatever. Yeah. Reported large fires and explosions at a military airfield in Jankoy, Crimea, which the senior administration official said was also a long-range ATACMS target. And in an address that evening, President Vladimir Zelensky thanked Alexander Syrsky, the Ukrainian
Sersky.
commander, yeah, but did not elaborate on the attack. In a major policy
Mhm.
shift, President Biden secretly approved the decision to send more than 100 of the long range missiles in mid February. Senior
Yeah,
U.S.
and
officials said, as well as more cluster
also
munitions. They're part of a $300 million shipment of weapons to Ukraine in March, the first new aid package for the country since funding ran out in late December. And this is before the new package has gone through. So,
and the Germans have a
coup.
version of this that apparently now they're starting to talk about
Mm-hmm.
sending as well. There has been this
Great.
thing about this war where we kind of break a threshold and then all of our allies follow behind once we break down
Correct.
that door. Man, Crimea's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Crimea's in big, big trouble, and that's a good thing. Um, I feel for the people of the peninsula. They've had it rough.
Mm-hmm.
There's been when this is the other thing that when eventually they are liberated, because I do think they will be liberated. We're going to hear some awful stories because they've been we know for a fact that they've been putting down the local the native actually Crimean Tatar population, the Muslims there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let's light it up. Let's light Crimea up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take out the Kerch Bridge. Let's take out the railway. They will freak out. The
Yep.
Russians will freak out. And
They
they will,
indeed
I do
have.
not think, yeah, they have. And I don't see them turning their ire against NATO or the West. Actually, I think as
Mm,
much as they have to this point kind of like rallied around and been like, let's all work for let's denazify those Ukrainians and let's reestablish empire. They're perfectly happy to jump on all that jingoistic bullshit. But again, if if
mhm,
they, and I was just here because I'm helping other Ukrainian journalists to use this space to do their own podcasting as well. And I had a young Ukrainian journalist in here and we
mhm,
were talking about this very, very issue. And she agreed with me, this concept of like the body count won't matter. What will matter is if you take away, you have to understand the importance of Crimea and Sevastopol. Not
right.
only is it strategically necessary for them, not only is it a source of potential revenue for them because of the offshore oil deposits that fall in the native waters there, um, but it is historically vital for them because this is when Russia expanded into empire, when it stopped being Muscovy and
Mhm,
started expanding into empire. Um, One of their major moves towards empire by Catherine the Great, who is one of the great titans on the lands on the stage of Russian history. She's the one that, as the Ottoman Empire, which had overexpanded, was withdrawing and contracting. She's the one that expanded south and took Crimea and then subsequently went down along the Black Sea and established Odessa. Now they've lost Odessa forever.
yeah.
We've talked about this in the past. I have a number of logs from Odessa. They will never ever take Odessa back.
Mm-mm.
It's gone. It's lost to them forever. Kind of happens when you blow the shit out of everybody and kill your
Right.
neighbors, your friends, and your family,
Yeah,
and destroy some
they
of the
pretend to be
beautiful
less
architecture
forgiving
down there.
about that shit.
Yeah, a little less. Um, they're never going to get Odessa back, but they like to pretend that they will.
Right.
This, however, if they lose
Make it candy.
Crimea, or if Crimea is, they won't be able to deny it. They won't be able to, and by default, they also recognize that if we can't keep Crimea, we sure as hell can't keep Odessa either. And this will, Peter the Great. Again, this goes. This is. I know people might think, "Oh, Phil, you're giving me a history lesson." Well, it matters because we are
Yeah.
living
That's how they
history.
think of it.
This is the
They're
culmination of their
enforcing.
history, and
Yeah,
it's
they're
exactly, yeah.
enforcing a version of history, and they are trying
Yes,
to square peg this historical
right.
ideology into a round hole, and it
So
isn't working. Mhm,
Peter the Great, back in the 1720s, comes back from Europe, where he's been kind of going on his Rumspringa, and partying his way through the European capitals. And he comes back having seen naval powers and says, in order to compete with the Dutch and the Brits and the French, we have to build a powerful navy. Russia must be a naval power. And the
mhm,
only way to do it is to strike towards warm water ports. We must This is my legacy and my direction to you, Russia. As I, leave behind, this is what you must do: seek a warm water port, which then, of course, led to Catherine eventually doing it. So you betray the dream of Peter. You lose that which Catherine took, and much of this is tied into their sense of being a great global power and being what they call the third Rome, which is
Hmm.
the inheritor of Rome by way of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire, the Orthodox Christian Byzantine Empire.
Right.
That dream of a third Rome, that's gone. No Russian leader
Right.
survives the betrayal of some of the most important historical and living historical aspirations and sense of identity that the Russians sell themselves than what Vladimir Putin has done.
And what
He's
he's
living
about
on
to
borrowed
lose.
time,
Yeah.
baby.
Yep.
He is screwed. And
So,
we all know what happens when Russia goes on a foreign war and tries to expand and loses a foreign adventure like the Russo-Japanese War or Afghanistan. It leads to a change in the power structure in Moscow.
mhm.
Putin has got to know that he's in trouble. Oh, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yes,
So this is
is
the
that the
New York.
Post?
This is the New York Post, and that in and of itself, this is a Murdoch paper. This is
Mhm. The
this is
Post, for God's
very,
sakes.
yeah, it's very Trump friendly. This
Oh
paper.
yeah,
Now
it's a
remember,
rag.
let's enjoy the fact also that that Trump is so fucking dumb. He walked into a rake that she threw in front of him. He met with Mike Johnson right about the time because she set up this vote to get rid of him to try and head off this vote, right, on the aid, because she thought she could scare him into not bringing this shit up. And Trump, was like, we don't need chaos in my election year. This is about me, you dumb motherfucker. This isn't about you. And so he met with him to try and stabilize what was going on there. And what's happened is, amongst the Marge crowd, is she believes, and a lot of them believe, that Trump gave Mike Johnson permission to put this vote forward. And they're afraid that he also said, the border bill as well, or some shit like that. Or like, you can do that. Don't do the border bill, but do this. Whatever. They don't know, because nobody knows, because I don't even think he said anything cogent while he was there. I think it was just a show of, they just shook hands and chattered. Trump wasn't listening. He's worrying about all of his other shit and trying to, count whatever money's left in Truth sinkhole. But the fact that this is the story that's running is just, and this
Yeah.
isn't, by the way, this isn't, the, I don't know, whatever, the New York Times or Washington Post or, some shit, right? This isn't a graphic on fucking MSNBC. It's a Murdoch paper.
Mm.
And this is in line with, by the way, the Mitch McConnell thing that just came out. I don't know if you saw his statement, Phil, but they asked him who was responsible for the delay in funding, and he said Tucker Carlson. Tucker
Yes, I
Carlson
did
is
see that.
demonization of
Or I
Ukraine
heard that. I
and
read that.
Trump are the two reasons why these things, got hung up the way they did, because he made them buy into this bullshit, and that was, I mean, again, a broken clock moment for Mitch, right? But still,
Wow.
yeah,
I mean,
huge.
you know, as disturbing as it is to see them get frothing in the mouth as if they're a bunch of rabid dogs because they love Putin so much. Um, when we get this election, when we get November in the rearview mirror,
Hmm.
and we got a second Biden term, and Trump is gone and done. He's not.
Yeah,
He'll
Trump's
be a
not going to
thing of
get
the
a
past.
third bite at the apple. Nope.
He's not going to go again. And he's gonna. And I agree with you. And I have reasons for it. It's not just wishful thinking. He's
Right.
as the court cases continue to wear him down, and as the curtain is revealed to see what a petty loser,
Yeah.
miscreant, just weirdo. I mean, because they're
Yeah.
going to show his life. They're
Yeah.
going to show his life. We're going to
Yeah.
see what kind of a human being he is on a day-to-day operational kind of level,
Hmm.
and it's going to reveal what a freak job the man is. he's not going to he's not going to come out of this unscathed. Right now, he might be getting some, martyrdom points. But when like he did what and he said what, and that's how
Right.
he spends his day doing what, and what he does, that's how he talks and that's how
Yeah.
he treats his family and
I'll
his
give you one of the
associates.
best.
He's fucked.
Let me
But
explain to
just to
some folks.
quickly
Yeah.
finish my
Yeah. Go
thought,
ahead. Sure. Yeah.
when we get Trump, when November is in our rearview mirror, and when this war is either in our rearview mirror or the momentum is clearly on the Ukrainian side, we will. I we I am hopeful, and I urge us to have a postmortem, what the
Yeah.
military calls an after action report. We need to really take a good hard look at what has been going on with our body politic and again the
Yes.
Russian infiltration of it. So anyhow, sorry, that was my thought.
No, no, it's good. Let me explain to you in case anybody is under the misapprehension that Donald Trump isn't a fucking moron. That it, as this process went on, and he, besides the fact that he might get thrown in jail for violating the gag order, and he's not going to go overnight, he won't go for 5 days, but there's a chance he'll go in for like a couple hours, like the judge will put him in a timeout effectively. And the story around that is going to be so glorious that Trump gets put in a timeout. The toddler AI images will just eat up your social media feed. I'm just saying in this situation, but the fact that Trump does not know, nor does he have any interest in knowing what side of this issue he should firmly be on, partly because of finance, and the idea that Russia was backing him initially or whatever compromise they might have on him, but just his own. Because at this point, I think he's kind of given up on. You can't blackmail somebody who's this gross. So I think they've just kind of given up on the idea that Russia can hold something against him, unless they have something just genuinely horrible. I mean, he did have the like Miss Teen USA thing, and he bragged about looking in the mouths of these, half-dressed teenagers backstage, and he bragged to Howard Stern about that. So at a certain point, confirmation of that will grow over time. But in this particular instance, Biden was in Florida campaigning on abortion rights while Donald Trump was in court in New York, the city that never sleeps, falling asleep at the table. It's so good. And his biggest supporters, the people who always leapt to his defense, are either slowly but surely being kicked out of fucking Congress, or they're turning on him because he did something normal or that they perceived as normal or in his own self-interest to just kind of protect himself. By meeting with Mike Johnson, he screwed himself with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She can't now come out and talk to the same people and go, yeah, I got Trump's back and all the situation, because she secretly blames him because there's correlation, not causation. She can't prove that he didn't have this conversation. Just go ahead and pass the Ukraine funding, get this off the table. She can't prove that conversation didn't happen, and therefore that Mike Johnson didn't get special dispensation from the dipshit Pope to go ahead and launch this. So she can't actually defend Trump around this. It's so good. It's so fucking good. But
Yeah,
and
they're tearing at one another, and I'm here
yeah,
for it.
and because they have no morals, they have no. This isn't based
No,
on anything real. That's the thing. I mean, it's if your ethics and your morals and your ideas are based on something real, you can both stand on that standard and have that standard held against you in contrast and live with the ramifications of it. That's fucking life.
and let's hope
Meanwhile,
the fever breaks. Let's hope the fever
right.
breaks by the adherents.
Yeah.
They've always been with us, whether they were, the Bill the Butcher or whatever, America First, that kind of like nativists, the
Yes.
nativist movement of the kind of early and mid 19th century, all the way through the Confederacy to the KKK to all the rest of it, and now to MAGA. They've always been with us.
Hmm.
But who else has always been with us? People who actually believe in the American
Yeah, there's a
project,
lot more of them.
there are a lot more of us. I'm watching currently, just to kind of distract myself, because we are getting increased air raid sirens, and I would not be terribly surprised if we get a major attack at some point before the Patriot missiles are here. I would not be terribly surprised if the Russians ratchet it up to send a message.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of distracting myself, and I'm watching this documentary series about General Grant and about the fact that, like, we always talk about like the lost cause and why did the Southerners fight, and was it state rights or was it slavery? And I mean, we fucking know what it was. It was
Hmm.
goddamn slavery. Um,
Yeah.
but it's interesting in the documentary I'm watching is that they go at one point, and it very, it affected me a good deal. It was that, like, we always talk about why the Southerners fought, why the Northerners fight.
Right.
The Northerners fought because, don't tell me it's for industrialization and they wanted to their
Right.
economic industrial system to
They were
be bled into the.
abolitionists.
Oh, fuck that. They were abolitionists. And the
Right.
longer they stayed at war and the more that they were on campaign, moving through the South and seeing, I like boys that came from fucking New Jersey and Michigan,
Yeah.
Ohio, these guys who had never stepped foot out of their hometowns, and they've heard, about slavery, but then suddenly they're on a march through Georgia, or
Right.
they're down in the swamps, or they're running and they're seeing these plantations, and they're seeing what slavery really means, and they're like, fuck that. Now I
Yeah.
know why I'm fighting.
Yeah. And they
and that
won because of it.
and they won because of it, and that still exists. That
Yes.
it has always been our kind of,
Hmm.
schizophrenia in some ways.
Yeah.
Democracy is messy and sloppy and difficult,
Hmm.
and these assholes have always been with us. But they don't determine the course of America, because I still believe in America, and despite all of our faults, and despite when we let ourselves down, and despite when we don't live up to our ideals, we're still better than the assholes who are like, the vote didn't go the way I like it, so
Hmm.
I'm going to tear it all down. Whether it's J6 or firing on Fort Sumter, you
Hmm.
can't take if you can't take a loss at the ballot and go, okay, that's the way that's the way it goes.
Yep.
Let's rally back up. Let's think of better messaging. Let's find a better way to gain support, so that when we go to the ballot next time, we'll win. These assholes who have always been with us, when they lose a vote that they don't like,
Hmm.
let's kill people.
Yeah.
Let's do it through violence. It is the exact that's what Russia wants. That's
Hmm.
how Russia, again, I'm a broken record, but it's that 1855 letter to Joshua Speed by Abraham Lincoln, in which he says, we said all men are created equal. These assholes say all men are equal except for people I don't like. If that's the way this country goes, I'd rather immigrate to Russia, where at least they don't pretend to believe in liberty or freedom. That
Hmm.
was written in 1855. They've
Yeah.
always been with us, and Russia has always been that way. It is. It's time we make a change. This is a historic war. This will change one way or the other. We're in it now.
Yep.
It can't be stopped. Putin started it. We will finish it. But one way or the other, this war is going to change the globe. It's not, as much as we all hate war, I've been in more wars than I would ever want to do, again. And I want to get out of this war. I want to go home, man. But this
Hmm.
is too important. This is
Right.
too important. And this war has to be resolved with victory, because otherwise you're going to have the Confederacy. You're going
Yeah.
to have, imperial despotic Russia. It's got to be put in the dustbin of history. And we can do it. This will change the world. And we just have to keep with it. And I'm so happy that he signed the aid package. I'm glad that my country is back doing what it should be doing. In my opinion, this will affect people. Think it won't affect them in their own backyard. It will. The
Hmm.
globe is going to change, one way or the other. We just have to recognize that it's happening. This metamorphosis is happening. We have to decide how we want this to end,
Yep.
and we have a say in this thing. So
Absolutely.
we can win. We can
Hmm.
win. We just can't lose our resolve.
Hmm.
And
Well,
I
we
was
took
worried,
an
but it's
enormous
good to see it.
step forward, as I said we would, and a lot of the story was
Yeah.
written about who could, in our democracy, who can stop something. We've had this Mr. Smith goes to Washington idea that as soon as it became a good thing on, on the Democratic side of the aisle to discuss, the power of Mr. Smith goes to Washington, that is exactly when the Republicans and their foreign support decided to weaponize that very idea by, funding Ron Paul and that ilk, by
Ugh.
driving this idea of like create the structural creation under Reagan of the single vote, the silent vote to scuttle a piece of legislation started largely in the 80s. And it was because, like, why should you have to speak to be the Mr. Smith goes to Washington? Why can't we just have a filibuster that nobody has to stand for? And Democrats for a long time said, look, we're for the filibuster, but you should have to fucking stand there the entire time and justify what you're doing, or show everybody that you have the strength to carry it out, because you refuse to do anything except read the phone book or whatever, because you're not leaving because this is too important. And they've been weaponizing that ever since. The problem is they don't like the idea of of one person, one vote, and when it's their turn, they push right back. They want to shut it down. So because they're on both sides of every fucking issue, they have more wedge points than Democrats do. That's Trump's biggest weakness, is the fact that he vacillates and has no idea which side of an issue he should genuinely be on. He really doesn't. He's so transactional, and he's so broke, he can't pass up the possibility of the next transaction. Right? He can't. If more money's going to come from my right, I can't lean to my, and the money's coming from my left right now. But what about if I get too much into that and there was more money to be had this direction and I cut myself off from that potential, right? So there is no tuning fork in his world. He is always an out of tune string, and he will always be that way. He will be discordant for those who want him to be discordant, but he will never fit into a chord. And it's fascinating to me how long it took some of these folks to learn this fucking lesson. But it seems a good portion of them are learning it. And one of the things they're doing is they're shrugging off Marjorie Taylor Greene's fucking threats and going, yeah, good, fill your boots, dumbass.
Her push to make Gates the speaker was just hysterical.
Oh
yeah, do it, Marjorie.
Yeah,
absolutely, go for it, babe.
Yourself out, you complete putz.
Stupid woman.
Yeah, I'm so
you really are. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm cautiously curious over the next couple of weeks. And I do believe that the next big talking point from our right-wing friends that will be like, oh my God, they blew up the pipeline. It's World War III. Oh my God, they tried to knock out the Kerch Bridge. It's World War III. Oh my God, they're threatening, they've got missiles going further in, or drones going further into Russia. It's World War III. Like, they've been saying this shit the whole fucking time. Every time Ukraine gets a toehold, they say this. So I have no doubt that when the Kerch Bridge goes down for good, which it's gonna, the attack of that should be the one thing. Like, make the Russians take these motherfuckers out on boats. Go, tell you what, we're not gonna bomb any of the boats as long as they stay on the far side of Crimea if you're trying to evacuate people. But you're not gonna drive back and forth on that fucking bridge anymore. Sorry.
If I was, and this is an armchair general kind of thing, but I've been to a few wars in my time and seen how these things go. I think you take out the railway first, frankly, and you keep the fighting on this side of the peninsula, and then once you get to a point where you've got momentum, that's your coup de grace. That's your last message to Russia that, hey, that peninsula is not yours.
Right.
But it's coming. It's coming. That bridge is coming down. And it's
agreed.
It's
so thanks so much, Phil, for being on.
All right,
when is the first episode of On the Edge coming? I want to make sure we get that in before the end of the show.
Not this Friday, next Friday, I'm hoping.
A week from Friday.
By the way, a week from Friday, and I've got my, by the way, now that the vote went through.
Oh, look at that.
Put that back on my hat.
Nice.
So I took that off for a while because
I understand. Because we're catching shit from people in the
well, it wasn't catching shit.
It
was my decision. It was my decision. I felt bad.
Right.
But I'm happy to have put that back on. I'll be conducting an interview next Tuesday with our first guest, and then I will be editing it and publishing it. And we expect to be putting out interviews weekly on Fridays. And I'm going to work out um, maybe like a weekly synopsis that, depending on the analytics, maybe we put out on Wednesday, Wednesday or Sunday. But the first interview and the bulk of what I'm going to be doing here is interviews, because I want to talk to people. I want to talk to Ukrainians and people who have a perspective on Ukraine. But we'll also do kind of a weekly wrap up. First interview should be, if all goes according to plan, next week, next Friday. Not this, but the week from Friday. So it'll be good. Tune
awesome.
in.
Well, thanks for being in here, brother. And I'm glad it's been a nice week to be on with you on the regular, because and not just because anytime my predictions come true, I feel good about having company. But we appreciate it, brother. Be safe, and we will talk to you very, very soon. I'll see you on Saturday, where I will, by the way, be in Philly. So I will be where our country was formed in so many ways. So
there you go.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Cheers.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, there he goes. Philip Bittner. And it's evening where he is. So hopefully you can go get something good to eat. And believe me, I look forward to one day trying the Ukrainian cuisine there in Ukraine itself. That would be so lovely. I have to say the Ukrainian restaurant that we went to in Chicago that I had no idea was there, and that's relatively new, obviously, is a big part of it, was really lovely. And so I'm just saying. But anyways, I appreciate you guys. Let me jump in here with the chat real quick and say bye to you guys, because we had a very full show today with the Major, so I thank him for being on. Again, turnleftpack.org. And then, of course, Philip's going to have his, a week from Friday, he'll be launching his podcast, so hopefully everybody will subscribe and support that as well. That's On the Edge. We're a rising tide that lifts all boats. If you don't believe me, ask our dear friend Boston Brian. Go support him and Texas Paul. That's right. Make sure you lift up these voices that are around you. It doesn't take much, a little subscription. If you feel like supporting financially, that's very cool too. But at the very least, just giving them a thumbs up really helps push them forward and nudge past people who have a lot of, I'm just saying, bought bullshit followers. I'm just saying it's a thing, and it helps us push back against the kidney.
The kidney has a very special place in the heart.
What?